Welcome back. So far we've introduced the functionality to select these units and move them around with right click. Now what I want to do is create a UI element where we can see a 2D image of all of the units we have selected sort of in a box at the bottom of the screen, which is typical of a RTS genre. So what I'm going to do first is make my 2D pictures of my two units I have here. And so what I'm going to do is actually just sort of cheat here. I'm going to use these images of these thumbnail images that the engine's already created. And what I'll do is just hold Control and scroll my mouse wheel up. And then I'm going to use Shift, the Windows key, and S combination. And that's going to let me just grab a snippet here. I'm going to grab a roughly square box here with that guy. And then I'm going to hop over to GIMP, and that's free software. Anybody can download this. I'm going to press Control-Shift-V to paste that, and I'll just go here to Image, Scale Image, and I'm just going to make sure 150 sounds good. I'll just make sure it's fully square here. Select this link, 150. All right, and I'm going to export this as unit1.png. All right, and I'm just going to grab this one the same way, Shift Windows S, and I'll grab this guy here, Control Shift V, and Image Scale, and I'll make this 150 by 150, and export this one as well. So back in the engine here, I'm just going to grab those two files that I just made, drag them in here. And I'll just hold Control and scroll the mouse wheel down again here to make this a bit smaller icons here. Maybe do that. All right. So I've imported those two textures, those two images. Now what I want to do is open my parent unit class, and I'm going to add a variable here. I'm going to call this 2D underscore image. And I'm going to make the variable type a texture 2D. Right there. All right, and I'll compile that, save, close that for a second here. I'm going to open up each of my units, unit style 1, full blueprint editor. Okay, and in my details here, I can find that variable, the 2D image, and I'm going to set this to unit 1. All right, and I'll open up unit style 2 and do the same thing here, but I'll set this to unit 2. Okay, so now I've set a reference to the images for each of these units. So the next thing I want to do here is let's make the widget itself that's going to be on the screen. So I'll right click here, user interface, widget blueprint, make a user widget. I'm going to call this the selected units area. Okay, and I'll open that up, and I'm going to add a canvas panel. If you're using UE4, you'll already have a canvas panel automatically. UE5, they don't include that. Okay, and on the canvas panel here, I'm going to add a horizontal box. I'll just drag that out onto the panel. And I'm going to set the size here. I'll set the size X to, let's say, 1,000. And size Y, let's say 150. All right, and I'll just sort of center that here. And I want to name this box. I'm going to call it, let's say, the units box. And I'll make it a variable. Okay, and I'll close that for now. And I'm going to make another widget. This one I'm going to call the selected unit widget. Okay, and for this one, I'm going to first of all set the size here from fill screen to custom on screen. And I'm going to make that 150 by 150. All right, I'm going to add an image. So if you're using UE4, you'll have to delete the canvas panel that's already included here. In UE5 there's nothing there, so I'm just going to drag this image, drop it there, and I'll name this image, we'll call that unit image. Make sure it's set to variable. Okay, and so what I want to do next is open the brush settings here and set the image size here to be 150 by 150 as well. And then one more thing here, I'm going to select the widget itself, the root of the widget, and in the details here I'm going to find padding. I'm going to change this to, let's say, 3 pixels of padding. So it'll be on the outside around this box. And this widget, we're basically going to populate the other widget that we just made with these. Okay, so we'll close that for now. Actually, I've got to open that back up. I forgot one thing here. In this widget, I'm going to go to the graph and add a variable, and it's going to be the unit reference. So we know which unit this widget is referring to. We're going to set that to actor. All right, and now I'll close that, and I want to close both of these as well. I'm going to reopen the parent unit class. And on the parent unit class, I want to find event begin play. And I'll drag off of this and say create widget. I'm going to delete this begin overlap. I'm not going to use that. Okay, create widget, and I'm going to create a new selected unit widget. So every unit, when it begins play, will create its own selected unit widget. And then we're going to set a couple of these variables. So I want to say, well, first thing I want to do is I want to save a reference to this widget for us to use. So I'm going to promote to variable, and we'll call this the selected unit widget. All right, and now I want to set some of the values here. So I want to set that unit reference to start with, and the unit we want it to refer to is self. All right, and now I'm going to set the unit image. So I have to actually say get unit image, and then use a set brush from texture. All right, and the brush that we're going to plug in here, sorry, the texture is going to be this 2D image that we've already set up for both of our units earlier. Okay, so I'll plug that in there, and that's pretty much it here. This is going to be the setup. I'll just comment this here. This is setup the selected unit widget. Okay, and what I want to do is add these widgets here that we've created for each unit to our selected units area widget, that first one that we made. So first thing I'll do here is open up the player controller. And on the begin play node, I'm going to create that selected units area widget. So I'll say create widget, selected units area, and I want to promote that to a variable so I can refer to that later. I'll call it selected units area, and then we'll add it to the viewport. Okay, so that'll add the first widget we made there with just the empty horizontal box. So there'll be nothing on the screen until it's populated by some children. And so what we want to do to populate it is we're going to make a call to the player controller and tell it to add something to this selected units area. So I'm going to go open my RTS interface. And I need to add a couple functions here. So I'm going to add a function called add selected or add unit to selected units area. Okay, and so I'm going to need an input for that, and we're going to input the unit that's going to be added. Actually, it's going to be the widget itself. So I'm going to say the selected unit widget, and I'll set this to a user widget. All right, so I'm going to compile and close this, and now I'm going to create that event here. I'm going to say event add unit to selected units area, and what we'll do is grab the selected units area, and drag from that, and we need to get the units box. That's the name of the horizontal box. And then we're going to say add child to horizontal box. All right, and I'll plug in the selected unit widget input here. That'll be the child that we're adding. All right, so now what I want to do is go back to my parent unit class, and when a unit gets selected, I want to call that event here. I'm going to say player controller add selected add unit to selected units area. Okay, and I'll pipe in our selected unit widget that we created on begin play. All right, and then when we deselect the unit, we want to take the same selected unit widget, Control D to duplicate, and here I'm going to say remove from parent. So when we're selected, we add it. Deselected, we remove it. Fairly straightforward. Okay, so let's check it out so far. I'm going to go ahead and select some of these units here. And it's adding the pictures into our box, as expected. It removes them as we deselect units. Okay, so that's perfect. That's just the behavior that I wanted. I could maybe center this in the screen a bit more, but I'm not too worried about that. And so the next part that I want to make here is I want to be able to click on one of these unit portraits, let's say, and select that specific unit. So right now, if I click here, it's just registering as a regular click and starting the marquee selection. So it deselects everything, and so let's change that up. First thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my widget, the selected unit widget. And I want to go to the graph, and I'm going to make a new function here. I'm going to override the on mouse button down event or function. All right, and on mouse button down, what we want to do here is say, first from the mouse event, I want to say is mouse button down, and we can put in here left mouse button, use a branch, because this event's going to fire for any mouse button, so we want to make sure it's the left mouse button only. And if it's not, we'll just plug in a return node with an unhandled so that that'll bubble through then to the player controller or other input actors. All right, and so if it's true though, we pressed a left mouse button on our widget, then what we want to do is we want to clear all of these selected actors and select a single actor, the unit reference here. So we need to create a couple of functions for that. So I'm going to go back to my RTS interface, add a function, and this one's going to be called clear selected units, and I'm going to add one more called select single unit, and for that one I'll put an input and call it unit, set the type to actor. Okay, I'll compile that and close, and what I want to do is put those events in my marquee HUD blueprint. Okay, so I'll open that up, go to the event graph, and find the new space here, and I'll make the event clear selected units, and also I'll make the event select single unit. All right, and for clearing, pretty basic here, we're just going to grab our selected units array, and we'll say for each, and plug that in here, and for each one we're going to say deselect the unit. And then when that's done, we'll just grab from the selected units array here and grab a clear node, and that'll clear the array. Okay, so I'm going to grab this, I'll comment this, clear selected units. And now for selecting a single unit, pretty simple as well. Oops, that's not a Boolean. Let me go back to the interface here. Select single unit. I guess it didn't change here. I'm going to try that again. Actor. Okay, looks right. Back to the HUD here. All right. So we want to first thing is drag from that unit and say select unit. We'll send the select unit message. And then we want to grab from this unit and add it to this selected units array. So we'll say add unique. And I'll plug that in there. All right, so that's select single unit. Okay, so I've put both of these functions here in the HUD blueprint. And so now I'll close that, and back in this selected unit widget on the mouse button down event, now I can say, I'll call get HUD, I need to say get player controller, and then get HUD, and from that I can now call clear selected units, and that'll be the first thing we do here. And then I'm going to say select single unit. All right, and for that one, we'll plug in the unit reference here. Okay, and then we want to do another return node here. If we've done that, I'll just duplicate that node here, and we'll return, this time though, we'll return a handled, so that the mouse click doesn't bubble through. It'll just end here as a handled event. All right, so that's the on mouse button down event that will select our single unit when we click on it. So let's check it out here. Okay, I've got my units selected here. And let's say I'll just grab this guy here, click, and that's worked out. We've got a single unit selected here. I could move him over here, grab another one here. Okay, so far so good. I'm just going to take this, let's say, one step further here, and we'll add the functionality to actually see which unit that we're hovering over. If you grab them in order here, it's easy to see maybe which is which because they're right beside each other. But if you were all jumbled up, you might not know now, okay, which one am I grabbing here out of the group, right? You grab one, okay, oh, is that one. So let's make a couple more improvements here. First thing I'm going to do is in my, in my parent unit class here. Just going to move this up. And what I want to do is, in addition to being able to just select a unit, I want to be able to highlight it with sort of a different decal. So what I'm going to do is make an event, or a interface function here in the RTS interface. We're going to call this highlight unit, and I'll make another one here called, I guess, unhighlight unit. All right, and then in the parent unit class, I'm going to make those events. Event highlight unit and event unhighlight unit. All right, and so what I want to do is grab my selection decal here, and we'll say set material, and I'll set the decal material to some other material when we highlight it, and then I'll say set decal material again, and on unhighlight we'll set it back to the selected decal. All right, so now I just need to make this material I want to use here, and that's going to be pretty easy because I'm just going to use my selected decal material, press Control D, and I'll call this highlight underscore decal underscore MAT. And I'll open that up, and I'm just going to make a couple of changes from the original selected decal. So I'll change, first of all, the color, let's say, to yellow. And I'm going to make it a bit brighter here, and I'll do that by multiplying our output before it goes into the emissive color pin here. And I'll multiply it by something like 10. So that'll be a bit brighter, quite a bit brighter. And then I'm also going to change this period scalar value from 3 seconds to, let's say, half a second, 0.5. Okay, so you can see the effect here in the preview window. And I'll save. We'll close that. And in the parent unit class here, I'll set that decal material in the set decal material node here, highlight decal material. All right, and so now all we want to do is go back to our selected unit widget, and I'll go back to the event graph, and I'll make an on mouse entered and an on mouse leave. And what I'm going to do here is just say on mouse entered, we're going to take the unit reference here, the reference to the unit this belongs to, and say highlight unit. And for mouse leave, we'll grab this and say unhighlight unit. All right, and I'll just do one more thing even as well, just to make it clear which portrait we're hovering over. I'll grab the unit image here for this portrait, for this selected unit widget, and we'll say set, let's see, tint, the brush tint color. And we'll tint the image when we're hovered over it, and then we'll reset that back to normal when the mouse leaves, when we're not hovered. And so I need to just say make a slate color here, and the normal color should be just white, just 1, 1, and 1 here. And for the tinted color, I'll just duplicate this here with Control D, plug that in here, and the tinted color will make it, let's say, yellow, the same as our highlight decal. All right, so let's check it out here. I'm going to select these units here, and now I'll hover over these images, and yeah, we're getting our highlight decal is applied, and the image itself is being tinted the yellow color. All right, perfect. So that pretty much wraps up this video, and pretty much wraps up actually the initial sort of easier part of this tutorial. So we're going to start getting into some more complex mechanics that all work together with mechanics that we've already made so far in some of the next videos in the series. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.